the next slide I'm going to show you is going to have a couple of images, and I just want you to think of the first thing that comes into your mind. So without saying anything at all, I'm sure the first thing that popped into your head was the exact same thing as everybody else's first thought. And of course, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the COVID-19 pandemic today. So the pandemic has completely taken over in the past couple of months, and it has impacted just about everybody, from school shutdowns to nursing homes to small businesses to even survivors of domestic abuse. It has completely turned everybody's lives upside down. And while some people are doing the right thing by staying at home and wearing a mask and doing their own research, some people just can't wrap their head around that. So these are the types of people to think that injecting disinfectant is somehow a good idea without doing any sort of research about that. And they're also the same types of people to hoard toilet paper and wear their masks under their nose and go to a few parties here and there. And even now, all over the world, cases are still going up, and Ontario actually just reported a record number of cases this past Sunday. So why is it so hard for people to just stay at home and do what they're told? And today I'm going to be going over a couple of principles of human social behavior to help us understand how things got so out of hand. So a lot of people in the beginning especially were reluctant to stay at home in quarantine. And this is because humans have evolved to be social. Humans are very cooperative people, so we always work together to complete really difficult tasks. So for example, these people are all working together to build a car, which is something that's really difficult for one person to do, but it's easier when you have a whole bunch of people doing small tasks to help make this one big thing. So cooperative behavior helps us complete difficult tasks, and it helps us survive better. And alternatively, our body doesn't like it when we're alone. There are actually negative fitness consequences to loneliness. So loneliness comes with a 26% increased risk in the chance of early death, and it's also associated with a reduced immune response and poor sleeping habits. So while these are only correlations, it's still very clear that being lonely is a bad thing. So these two things taken together can tell us why we have such a difficult time when we're told to stay inside all the time. Our body is hardwired to not like it when we're left alone, and we want to try and push ourselves to go and socialize. Looking past the evolutionary standpoint, we can try and understand the problem by looking at some of the principles of group behavior. So when you're in a group, a lot of the times you try and feel harmonious and feel like you're cohesive with your group. But a result of this can be groupthink. And groupthink is when, in the pursuit of group cohesion, a lot of the times when you're making decisions, you will override any sort of rational thinking or personal beliefs. And this results in having a lot of extreme views. So a lot of the times when these groups form these extreme views together, they will go and attack other people that think otherwise, and they will think that everybody else is wrong without even considering what they're saying. So another way of thinking about this is like a mob mentality. So something that we're seeing that's happening right before us right now is thousands of people across North America especially taking part in these anti-masker groups, which have these extreme views that masks cut off your oxygen or take away your freedom or something. So these views might not have spread very easily on their own, but because some people are surrounded by people who think like this, they're more inclined to believe that and spread these thoughts themselves. Secondly, two other things to keep in mind are collective ignorance and diffusion of responsibility. Collective ignorance is when you're in a group of people and nobody's responding in a certain emergency, so you feel less motivated to respond yourself to that emergency. So there's this study that was done by Latan and Darley in 1968 that had a participant sit in a room, and that room slowly started to fill up with smoke. And if the participant was sitting alone, then they were very likely to go and report the smoke to somebody. But if the participant was sitting in a room with other people and the other people weren't responding, then they were less likely to respond themselves. So this is something that's actually happening right before us right now with the pandemic, a lot of people might see that politicians and doctors and authority figures aren't responding in this emergency. So they think that it's not actually an emergency themselves. So they don't do anything about it. And likewise, if you're in a family full of people that aren't social distancing, you might think that it's not a big deal to actually social distance. And secondly, diffusion of responsibility works a lot with collective ignorance. So diffusion of responsibility is when you refuse to take individual action because you believe that somebody else is more qualified to respond. So, for example, you might not respond because you think that a doctor or a politician would be better off. However, the problem comes up that during the pandemic right now, a lot of politicians and doctors and qualified individuals aren't actually responding in the way that they should. So what can you do to help? The first thing that you can do is simulate daily life. So take part in Zoom calls, take part in FaceTime calls to feed that need for social interaction that our body has. Secondly, you can think for yourself. When you're making your own decisions by yourself and doing your own research, it's a lot easier to think rationally and logically. And finally, you can take individual action. The virus doesn't spread unless it has people to spread it. And individual action drives change. So don't wait for somebody else to do it, act yourself. Thank you.